The room that vanished a student. The rain fell relentlessly on the tiled rooftop of the old university dormitory, soaking the cracked cement walls and echoing across the long, silent hallways like distant footsteps. It was the kind of night where the air felt heavier, where even the flickering fluorescent lights seemed reluctant to stay awake. Room 313 was at the farthest end of the third floor, a part of the dorm most students avoided after dark. Not because of the peeling paint or the odd draft that always seemed to come from nowhere, but because room 313 was locked. Not just with a padlock or a chain, but sealed. Thick wooden planks nailed diagonally across the door. A rusted warning sign hung loosely above it. Do not knock, closed by administration. No one remembered exactly when it had been sealed. Some said it was a fire, others whispered about a suicide. The university gave no official explanation. Like many urban legends, it simply existed. The older students warned the new ones, half joking, half serious. If you hear knocking from inside room 313, don't answer. Just leave. Min, a 19-year-old first-year literature student, had just moved into the dorm a week ago. Thin, quiet, and bookish Min kept to himself. He was the type who scribbled poems into the margins of textbooks and stayed up late reading under the covers. He first noticed the door during a midnight stroll down the hallway, hoping the walk would help him sleep. It was eerie the way the hallway lights dimmed as he approached the end, the way the air grew cold in front of 313. He paused. The door seemed to breathe. He told himself it was just the wind, but he also noticed something else: footprints. Bare, wet footprints leading from the stairwell to the front of 313. He followed them with wide eyes until they stopped abruptly in front of the sealed door. There were no puddles, no wet tiles, just those fresh prints. And then they began to disappear, not all at once, slowly. The last two faded before his eyes like steam vanishing from glass. Min didn't sleep that night. The next day he asked around about room 313. Most students brushed it off. "Don't mess with it, bro," said Vin, his roommate. "It's cursed or something. Some guy went in years ago and went crazy. I don't know. They sealed it shut." Another girl, Lynn, whispered to Min in the library. "One of the cleaners told me someone died in there. Like, slowly and painfully." "Do you believe it?" She looked around, lowered her voice. "I think something is still in there." Min didn't want to believe it. But that night, as he sat on his bed, he kept thinking about those footprints. Who did they belong to? Why were they barefoot? And why had they ended in front of room 313? Around 2:00 a.m., Min woke to a sharp, sudden tap. He sat up. Vin was asleep, snoring softly across the room. Tap, tap, tap. He followed the sound into the hallway. There was nothing. But then, knock, knock, knock. From room 313. He froze. The door remained motionless, the planks unmoved. But he could feel the vibration, faint yet rhythmic. Someone or something was inside that room, knocking back. He leaned in closer. "Hello." No answer, just silence. Then one scratch, scratch. A long, slow dragging sound from inside. Min backed away, heart thudding in his chest. He ran back to his room, locked the door, and lay awake until dawn. By morning, Min had convinced himself it was a dream. Maybe he had imagined it. He was tired, stressed, maybe even homesick. But that belief shattered when he walked to class and passed a group of students murmuring nervously. "Did you hear that sophomore guy from room 306 didn't show up for class?" Min frowned. "Who?" "Khan, I think. People said he went out for a smoke around midnight and never came back. Left his door unlocked and everything. His phone's still charging in the room." Min felt a chill spread through his chest. 306 was just a few doors down from 313. That night, the hallway was quieter than usual. The usual laughter and late-night conversations were gone. Some doors had towels stuffed beneath them, as if to keep something out. Min didn't go out, not this time. But just as he was drifting off, he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time it was softer, almost inviting. The following day, the university issued a short statement: Student Khan has left campus for personal reasons. No further details will be shared, but everyone knew something was wrong. Min couldn't concentrate in class. He kept replaying the events in his head: the footprints, the knocking, the scratch, the disappearance. His curiosity began to outweigh his fear. He decided to investigate. That evening, while the dorm was nearly empty, most students had gone out drinking or to study at the cafe. Min returned to the third-floor hallway. The sun had just set, casting orange light against the window panes. He stood in front of room 313. The planks looked old, weathered. A few nails had rusted through. One of the corners had come loose just enough to peek through. Min brought a flashlight. With a quick glance around, he bent down and looked into the crack. It was dark inside. The beam of light barely pierced through the musty air. He could make out a desk, an old bed frame, a cracked mirror on the far wall. Cobwebs hung like funeral veils. And then, something moved. Min dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the hallway, casting spinning shadows on the wall. When he retrieved it, he looked again, but the room was empty. Was it? He couldn't be sure. Back in his room, Min stared at the ceiling, heart still pounding. He didn't tell Vin. He didn't tell anyone. But the images haunted him. That flicker of movement, like someone turning away just before being seen. That night, he couldn't resist. He returned again. Same time, same hallway. He brought a crowbar this time. He hesitated only a moment, then jammed it under the loosened plank and pried. The wood creaked loudly, echoing down the corridor. He stopped, waited, but no one came. He removed 2 planks, enough to squeeze through. The door itself was old but unlocked. It opened with a click and a long, dry creak. He stepped inside. The room smelled of mildew and dust. The wallpaper had peeled away in long, curling strips. The air was thick, heavy, like something had been rotting, but there was no scent of death, only the sour tang of age and something unseen. Min clicked on his flashlight. The desk was carved with symbols, strange spiraling shapes and lines etched deeply into the wood. The mirror on the wall had a long crack running through its center like a lightning bolt frozen in glass. There was a chair, an old mattress, a set of journals in the corner. He picked one up. The cover was moldy, but the pages inside were legible. Day 12. She keeps whispering. I can't sleep. I don't know where she's hiding. The mirror shows things that aren't real. Day 17, I tried to leave. But every time I open the door, I'm still in the same room. Day 21, I don't know if I'm alive anymore. Suddenly, Min heard it. Click attack and The door behind him swung shut. He turned quickly, flashlight trembling in his hand. Knock, knock, knock. But it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the room. He turned toward the mirror and saw her, a girl standing just behind him, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. Min spun around, nothing. He looked back at the mirror. She was closer. When Vin woke up the next morning, Min was gone. His bed untouched. His books still on the desk. His phone still charging. His shoes still by the door. At the end of the hallway, room 313 had been resealed, tightly, as if no one had ever been inside. Whispers behind the door. The silence after Min's disappearance settled over the dormitory like a dense fog. No official announcement was made this time. No posters, no search efforts. It was as if Min had never existed. But Vin knew better. His roommate had vanished overnight. His belongings were untouched, wallet still in the drawer, ID card still on the desk. Only one thing was missing: Min's flashlight. That and his curiosity. The hallway leading to room 313 became even quieter in the days that followed. People passed it quickly, heads down, avoiding eye contact with the sealed door at the end. Even during daylight, it felt colder near the room. The overhead lights flickered more often, and sometimes the hallway smelled faintly of burned paper like old books set aflame. Vin tried not to think about it, but he couldn't ignore the strange dreams that began soon after Min vanished. In those dreams, he was always in the hallway, alone, barefoot, walking toward room 313. And just before he reached the door, he would hear it, a whisper. Soft, almost gentle, a woman's voice repeating something over and over again. But no matter how hard he strained, Vin could never make out the words. He always woke up just before he knocked. One afternoon, Vin skipped his lecture and sat alone on his bed staring at the ceiling. The dorm was unusually quiet. Most students were out enjoying the brief sunshine before the rainy season returned. He reached into Min's drawer. The notebook was still there, one Min had used for class notes, but tucked between two pages was something Vin hadn't noticed before. A torn corner of paper. On it, a scribbled sentence in Min's handwriting. She speaks when the door is quiet. What did that mean? Vin's stomach tightened. Against every instinct, every warning he'd heard, he stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked toward the hallway. Toward room 313. The hallway was empty. The lights hummed above, casting pale yellow pools along the floor. The planks on room 313's door had been reinforced recently. Someone, probably security, had added extra nails. Thick tape ran across the wood with a new warning. Condemned, do not remove. But Vin wasn't planning to break in. He just wanted to listen. He stepped close to the door, heart thudding in his chest. He felt foolish but also afraid. The kind of fear that feels like falling slowly into something too deep to see the bottom. He waited. At first there was nothing. Just the hum of electricity and distant bird calls outside the window. Then, something shifted. Not a sound exactly. A pressure, as if the air just behind the door had changed, grown thicker. And then faintly, a whisper. So soft it was almost imagined. He leaned closer. He's still here. Vin's breath caught. The voice was raspy, female, almost mournful. He knocked. I showed him the mirror. He stepped back. No. No, this couldn't be happening. This had to be a joke. Someone playing a trick on him. Maybe hidden speakers or a hallucination caused by stress. But then the whisper returned. This time louder, urgent. Hakim, don't let them in. A loud creak rang out from the other side of the door. Vin backed away quickly and ran. That night, Vin couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the door. He heard the whisper. That voice, it didn't sound like Min. It didn't even sound fully human. He tossed in bed, turning over Min's notebook, hoping to find more. But the pages were all class notes until the last few. On the final page, scribbled in pencil, she comes through the mirror. The door is just a passage. The mirror is the trap. Do not look into it, even if you hear your name. Vin felt a chill run down his spine. The next day, the hallway outside room 313 was cordoned off with yellow caution tape. Someone had broken in again, according to rumors. No one knew who. The administration was tight-lipped. They said it was a structural hazard, nothing more. But the whispers, they were real. Vin began recording. He left his phone propped up outside his door at night, pointed down the hallway. Most nights he captured nothing but ambient dorm sounds, doors closing, distant voices when. But on the third night at exactly 3:13 a.m., his phone caught something else. A click, then footsteps. Soft, slow footsteps. Then unmistakably, a whisper. He's watching now. Another will come soon. Then silence. But in the final seconds of the recording, a shadow appeared. Briefly. Not human-shaped exactly, but long-stretched, like someone standing between two lights. Then the phone shut off by itself. Vine didn't sleep after watching that. He knew what he had to do. He packed a bag with his flashlight, a second phone, and Min's notebook. He waited until just after midnight when the dorm quieted down. He walked slowly, deliberately toward the hallway. Room 313 loomed at the end, shrouded in dim light. The caution tape had been ripped away by someone else again. The door was slightly ajar. That was new. Vine stood still. The air felt wrong, too cold, too still, like everything around him was holding its breath. From within the room, the whisper returned. He's watching again. Dina, why do they always knock? Naniri. He pushed the door open. The room inside was a mausoleum of dust and decay. The furniture hadn't changed. The same cracked mirror, the same warped desk, the same old mattress. The smell of mold and old wood overwhelmed his senses. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. But this time he didn't panic. He turned on his flashlight and moved toward the mirror. There was no reflection. Not his, anyway. The mirror showed the room, but instead of Vin, it showed someone else standing there. Mern, gaunt, pale, mouth slightly open like he wanted to scream but couldn't. His eyes were wide, pleading. Min, Vin whispered. Min raised a hand. Behind him in the mirror, a shadow moved. A tall, flowing figure. Female. Long black hair obscuring her face. She reached for Min's shoulder. Vin spun around. No one there. Back to the mirror. She was now staring directly at him through the glass. Hair still covering her face. But her lips were moving. Whispers. So loud now, filling the room, layering over each other like 1,000 voices screaming softly. Meshakadigakanok. A mirror. Open. Yukrisana, join us. The mirror began to tremble. Then crack. A small fracture appeared, then another. Vin turned and ran for the door. It was locked. He pounded on it. Behind him, glass shattered. He turned one last time and saw her emerging. Not physically, but like smoke from the broken surface of the mirror. Her arms stretched unnaturally long fingers, tapering into claws. The whispers were screaming now. Vine screamed too. When he woke up, he was lying in the hallway outside room 313. The door was sealed shut again. No crack, no tape, no sign it had ever been open. His phone was gone. So was Min's notebook. But in his pocket was a piece of glass. Mirror glass. With a single word etched into it. Listen. From that night on, Vin could hear the whispers every time he passed room 313. But they never spoke to him again. They were waiting for someone new. Security camera deleted itself. The campus security room was small, cluttered with outdated monitors, and a wall lined with dusty VHS tapes and hard drives. Half the equipment hadn't worked properly in years, but it didn't matter. No one really paid attention to dorm security unless something got stolen or someone went missing. Lately, it had been the latter. First Khan, then Min, now Vin. The night guard Mr. Lam had been working at the university for nearly 12 years. A quiet man in his 50s, he kept mostly to himself, preferred instant noodles and old radio stations to interacting with students. He didn't believe in ghosts, didn't care for campus gossip, and hated being asked questions. But something had changed on the third floor of Dormitory B. He had seen it, or rather he had almost seen it. 2 nights earlier, the hallway camera outside room 313 had started acting strangely. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., the footage would glitch just for a few seconds. The image would warp, flicker with static, then jump ahead by 1 minute. At first, Mr. Lam dismissed it as a hardware issue. The system was old. Things like this happened. But then it got worse. The glitch grew longer. And on the most recent night, the footage didn't just skip, it erased itself. He had checked the file manually. The timestamp was there, or 3:13:00. The second ticked forward to 03:13:04, And then the file cut out. The next frame was 03:15 error 0. A full 2 minutes gone. No signal loss, no corrupted file, just deleted. He pulled the backup recording from the second hard drive. Same result. He reviewed the hallway camera for every day that week and discovered something even more disturbing. Each night that a student had vanished, the exact same thing occurred: static distortion deletion. March 6th, Khan's last night. March 12th, Min disappeared. March 16th, Vin vanished. Each date at 3:13 a.m., the footage erased itself. The system logs showed no errors, no tampering. No one had accessed the console. It was as if the camera itself had chosen not to see. Mr. Lam didn't believe in the supernatural, but the pattern was undeniable. And so for the first time in over a decade, he decided to investigate. At 2:45 a.m., he walked to the third floor of dormitory B with a thermal sensor, a backup camcorder, and a quiet resolve to prove something, anything that would make this stop feeling like madness. The hallway was silent. The air had a weight to it as if it hadn't been breathed in hours. He stood in front of room 313. The door looked the same: planks, sealed tight, warning tape reapplied untouched. But the air felt colder than usual, far too cold for a spring night. He placed the camcorder on a tripod at the far end of the hallway and pointed it toward the door. Then he leaned against the wall watching. At exactly 3:13 a.m., he pressed record. Nothing happened. The hallway was still. The lights flickered once. A soft hum from the fluorescent tubes. And then a whisper, faint, just like the students had described. A voice like wind scraping through leaves. He's watching. He reached for his thermal sensor. The screen blinked. The hallway was a pale green normal temperature except for the door to room 313. It was dark blue, below freezing. He moved closer, and then on the screen a handprint appeared, slowly, as if something inside the room had pressed a hand against the door from the other side. He staggered back. The whisper stopped, and a loud mechanical click echoed behind him. He spun around. The hallway security camera above had just powered off. He rushed to the camcorder and hit stop. The screen was black. When he checked the file, the timestamp read 3:13 a.m. to 3:15 a.m., but the file size was 0 kilobytes. It had erased itself. That morning, Mr. Lum went straight to the campus administration. He demanded a meeting with the dean. They didn't take him seriously. He showed them the deleted footage, the thermal images, the glitch patterns. Nothing worked. The moment he copied the files onto a USB, they corrupted. The backup drives went blank. Old equipment, they told him. You're overreacting. They placed him on paid leave. Meanwhile, rumors among the students spread like wildfire. Some said a girl had killed herself in room 313 years ago after being bullied. Others claimed it had once been a storage room for medical cadavers, and one body had never been claimed. A few believed the mirror was cursed, that anyone who saw their reflection inside it after 3 a.m. would become part of it. No one knew the truth, but they all knew this room 313 was hungry. Trang, a third-year psychology major, wasn't a believer in ghosts. She had a scientific mind, a rational worldview, but Min was her friend, and she refused to let him become another whisper in a wall. She found Mr. Lam's contact info and met him at a cafe off campus. He looked exhausted, pale, eyes bloodshot. I don't know what it is, he told her, stirring his black coffee, but it doesn't want to be recorded. Every time I try, it wipes itself, like it knows. Trang leaned forward. Then we don't record it. He looked confused. She smiled. We write it down. That night, Trang entered the dorm building with a small leather notebook, a pen, and no electronics. No phone, no camera, nothing that could be erased. She sat down at the end of the hallway facing room 313 and waited. 3:13 a.m. At first, nothing. Then the lights flickered. The air thickened, and the whispers began. He watches now. Sure, she waits behind the glass. Trang didn't panic. She wrote, Wyber 13 a.m. Hallway grows cold. Whispers are female disembodied. No visual disturbances yet. Then a sound. Soft footsteps. She looked up. There, standing in front of room 313, was Min, or someone who looked like him. Pale, blank expression, mouth slightly open. He wasn't breathing. He raised one hand and pointed at the door. Trang stood slowly. Min, she whispered. He didn't respond, but the whispers behind him grew louder. You must mirror. Mirror? He vanished. Just blinked out of sight like fog dissipating under a warm breath. Trang stood frozen. The hallway light above room 313 went out. The rest of the corridor dimmed one by one from far to near. Darkness moved like a wave. She turned and ran. When she reached her room, she locked the door, drew her curtains, and sat on her bed trembling. Her hands were still clenched around the notebook. She flipped through it. The pages were covered in her handwriting, except for one, the last page. One sentence had been scrawled in red ink she hadn't brought with her. Don't let the camera blind you. The ink bled into the paper like fresh blood. She returned to Mr. Lam the next morning. This thing, it's alive, she said, placing the notebook on the table. He nodded slowly. And it doesn't like being seen. Trang tapped the red ink sentence. It can manipulate electronics, but not analog, not paper. So what now? We map it. We record its behavior, every whisper, every date, every shadow. And then, Yalewan, Trang looked up, her eyes steady. We find a way to close the mirror. But even as they planned, something stirred. In the dormitory hallway, the camera above room 313 turned back on by itself. It blinked, flickered, and then the lens twisted sideways, pointing away from the door, as if something inside had reached through the wires and told it to look away. That night, the whisper changed. It no longer said he watches. It said, they're coming. The fresh paint trick. The university's maintenance crew was called in early on a rainy Wednesday morning. The new dean had finally had enough of the complaints, the rumors, and the growing paranoia among students. Room 313 was to be repainted, resealed, and removed from public knowledge. No more late-night whispering, no more disappearances, no more myths. The task was simple: repaint. The hallway replaced the warped door and get rid of anything remotely unsettling. Fresh paint, they believed, would clean the stain from everyone's mind. Mr. Kwong, the maintenance supervisor, was a hardened man in his 60s who'd worked through electrical fires, pipe bursts, and even a small student protest in the chemistry lab. He didn't believe in ghosts, didn't care for university politics, just wanted to get paid and retire early. He had 3 men with him, Fuchs Dung and Hao. None of them had ever been on the 3rd floor of dormitory B before. They arrived around 7 a.m., hauling paint cans, brushes, replacement door panels, and an electric sander. The students were still asleep. The hallway was empty. Too empty. Fuchs noticed it first. It's freezing up here. Dung nodded. Feels like we walked into a freezer. Mr. Kwong just waved them on. Move fast, paint it, patch it, and leave. We're done by noon. The crew pried off the wooden planks and stripped the door bare. It came off surprisingly easily, as though the seals had grown brittle from inside. Fuchs began scraping old paint from the walls, whistling to himself. But every few strokes his whistle caught. There were shapes beneath the paint, long dark smudges, like fingerprints or charcoal rubbings. And beneath them, strange markings carved into the wall itself, spirals, crosses, and crude symbols etched deep into the concrete, almost like claw marks. He called over Mr. Kwong. These under the paint. Kwong squinted. Probably old graffiti. Students are bored, they scratch stuff. Sand it down. Don't stop now. They sanded, primed, and began painting. At 10:34 a.m., the first handprint appeared. It was faint, red, smudged across the freshly painted white wall, like someone had pressed their palm flat and dragged downward. The paint was still wet, but the handprint was underneath. "Did one of you touch this wall?" Mr. Kwong asked sharply. All three shook their heads. He muttered something under his breath and painted over it again. 20 minutes later, another appeared, this time on the new door. A perfect palm, smaller than a man's hand, delicate fingers, again beneath the paint. The crew grew silent. By noon, they had painted over 7 handprints. They moved quickly now, eyes darting, breath shallow. Every time they turned away from a freshly painted surface, something reappeared. Smudges, streaks, letters. A dripping message that appeared on the upper corner of the door frame. "She waits." Mr. Kwong finally ordered a break. The crew stepped outside, lighting cigarettes with trembling fingers. "Something's wrong here," Dung said quietly. Fook nodded. "I heard whispering while I was painting the bottom wall." "You too," Howe added. "I thought I imagined it. It sounded like someone humming." Mr. Kwong was pale now too. He rubbed his eyes. "We finished the job. One more coat, then we leave." But when they returned, the hallway had changed. The final coat of paint had peeled itself away. Every wall section they'd finished now looked untouched, worse even. Cracked. Aged. As if the paint had been sucked into the wall and spat back out decades older. Mr. Kwong reached out to touch it and recoiled. The surface was icy cold. The paint was still wet, but the wall itself steamed like dry ice. "I'm done," Fook muttered, dropping his roller. At that moment, the lights flickered, then dimmed, and the hallway filled with whispers. "Go, she knows. Jorinin, you painted her away." The men froze. One by one, the paint cans exploded. Red splattered across the floor and walls, mixing with the white in horrifying streaks. The brushes caught fire. The new door buckled inward, as if something was pressing against it from the other side. Howe screamed and ran. Dung followed. Mr. Kwong grabbed his toolkit and dragged Fook out by the arm. As they stumbled down the stairs, they heard one final chilling sound. Knock. 3 slow knocks, coming from the inside of the freshly painted room 313. By that evening, the hallway was cordoned off again. The administration issued a memo: maintenance operations on the 3rd floor will be suspended indefinitely due to unforeseen structural issues. Students are advised to avoid the area until further notice. But the students already knew. They had heard the rumors. They had seen the crew running from the dorm, pale and shaking. Room 313 had rejected the paint. Trang returned that night. She had followed the maintenance reports and heard about the failed repainting. She brought gloves, a flashlight, and a small handheld mirror. Not the large, cursed one in the room, but one she hoped could act as a lens. A way to see without looking directly. She reached the 3rd floor around midnight. The hallway was dark, the lights now fully out. She approached the door. The smell of paint was sharp, but mingled with something older. Metallic. Decaying. Blood. She shined her flashlight on the door. The message was still there. She waits. Fresh, as if painted seconds ago. She raised the mirror and angled it toward the door, and froze. In the reflection, the door was open. Behind it stood a girl in a white dress. Hair soaked, skin bloated, eyes wide and black as ink. Her head tilted slightly as if curious, or mocking. The girl raised a hand. Trang dropped the mirror. She didn't run. Instead, she whispered, "What do you want?" There was no answer, but the air grew colder. Then the same message appeared this time. On the floor beneath her feet, scrawled in dripping letters. "Paint can't hide her." Trang slowly backed away. As she did, she noticed something behind the door, still faint in the mirror's reflection. A wall covered in portraits. Not drawings, not photos, but human silhouettes etched into the wall like burn marks, as if people had been absorbed into it. Their shapes stretched, mouths open in permanent screams. And there near the centerman, and just below him, Vin. Trang returned to her room and began writing. The paint was never meant to seal the room. It was meant to silence it. But room 313 doesn't want silence. It wants memory, attention, fear. Every time they try to hide it, it claws its way back. She flipped to a blank page and began sketching what she had seen in the mirror. The girl, the portraits, the shapes. And as she drew, something impossible happened. Her lines began moving, shifting, not physically, but as if the shapes were being rewritten while she watched. Her pen lifted without her pulling it, and a single sentence was etched onto the page. Paint her over, and she paints herself inside you. Trang dropped the notebook and stumbled back. Her window suddenly fogged from the inside, and across the condensation a handprint appeared. The next morning, Trang's roommate found her unconscious on the floor, whispering incoherently in her sleep. When she woke up, she couldn't speak at first, only draw. She filled 3 notebooks that day, page after page of the same girl in white, same black eyes, same soft smile, and always the phrase, "She waits." Later that week, the dean ordered the entire 3rd floor to be locked down permanently. Windows boarded, power cut, access restricted. But it was too late, because the paint had started peeling again, not just in room 313, but in every hallway it touched. A mirror left behind. Room 313 was silent again. No whispers, no knocks, no footprints in the dust. The door had been repainted, reinforced with new locks, metal strips, and even a high-grade magnetic seal. The university administration had gone to great lengths to erase the story again. More than half the students in dormitory B had requested transfers. The rest just kept their heads down, refused to speak of the room, and avoided the 3rd floor altogether. But something had been left behind, and it hadn't forgotten anyone. Trang had not returned to class since the night she dropped the mirror. She spent her days sitting at the desk in her room, staring into an empty journal. Every once in a while, she would pick up a pen and draw the same image again and again, the girl in white standing behind a tall mirror, one hand pressed against the glass. Her roommate tried to talk to her. So did her professors. The school counselor even visited once. But Trang didn't speak not a single word until the counselor asked a question no one else had dared to voice. "Trang, why are you so afraid of mirrors?" Trang blinked, and then whispered, "She watches from the wrong side." There had always been stories about that mirror. Back before the room was sealed, when it was just another student dorm, the mirror had hung above the desk like in every other room. Simple, functional, a little cracked at the corner. But according to a handful of students who lived in 313 years ago before it was condemned, there was something different about it. The reflection wasn't always right. Sometimes it showed the room exactly as it was, same furniture, same curtains, same lighting, but with one detail changed. A book moved, a door open instead of closed, a shadow standing where there shouldn't be one. Once a student named Lan said she saw herself sleeping in bed while she was standing at the mirror. She moved out the next day. No one took the mirror down. It had always stayed there, until the room was sealed. But something changed after the failed repainting. The administration had thought the room was locked for good. No one noticed the subtle difference on the security feed a week later. The door was still shut, but the mirror was gone. No one saw anyone take it. There were no signs of forced entry. The lock had not been broken. But the next time the hallway camera refreshed, the mirror was no longer hanging on the wall. Instead, it was leaning against the far end of the hallway, untouched, gleaming under the flickering light, as if it had walked out by itself. It was the janitor, Miss Han, who found it. She was doing her morning rounds, sweeping the stairwell, when she saw it propped against the wall near the fire extinguisher. Odd. The hallway had been sealed. There was caution tape and a locked gate barring anyone from the 3rd floor. And yet there it was. The mirror from 313. The distinctive crack running through the bottom left corner like a frozen bolt of lightning confirmed it. She leaned in, curious. At first, she only saw herself tired, shoulders slouched, mop in hand. Then her reflection blinked. She hadn't. Her heart jumped. She stepped back. Her reflection didn't. The mirror was removed and placed in the janitor's storage room on the first floor, locked behind two doors. She didn't tell anyone what she saw, not then. She simply logged it in her incident report as unlabeled mirror recovered from unauthorized area. But that night she began hearing the sounds. Footsteps outside the supply closet. A woman humming low and soft. Water dripping, though there were no pipes in that part of the hall. She called campus security, but they found nothing. The next day the mirror was gone again. This time it appeared in the main library in the psychology section. Students thought it was part of some weird exhibit, an old cracked mirror leaning between bookshelves. Some even took selfies with it, joking that it was the haunted mirror from the ghost room. But one by one, strange things started happening. Lynn, a student who posed with it on Instagram, suffered a seizure 2 days later. No known medical history. Nam, who took a mirror photo and used a filter, his phone bricked permanently. The last photo in his gallery showed a third figure between him and the mirror. No one else had been present. The librarian finally reported the mirror, and it was removed again, this time to the storage basement beneath the admin building. Out of sight, out of mind. But Trang knew better. She had started sketching again, not just the girl, but now the mirror itself. Each drawing became more detailed than the last. The frame, the warped reflection, the shapes behind the glass. By the 10th page, she had drawn a hallway behind the mirror, one that didn't exist on campus, at least not in this world. She began labeling what she saw. Hallway, 6 doors, one open. White floor, red stain near the baseboard. Shadows move only in reflection. On the 12th page, she wrote, "I think the mirror is a doorway, not to hell, not to heaven, just somewhere else. And she is its keeper." Meanwhile, maintenance staff began refusing assignments near the basement. Strange power surges were reported in the admin building, lights blinking without power, Wi-Fi signals dropping every time someone entered the east stairwell. And then a new memo was posted. All reflective surfaces larger than 24 inches must be covered or removed from storage areas until further notice. No explanation was given, but those who worked near the mirror knew why. The whispering was back, and the girl in white had been seen again, this time not in the mirror but walking away from it. Trang knew she didn't have much time. She packed a small bag with her sketchbook, gloves, and a compact mirror. She waited until campus quieted down after midnight, then slipped into the admin building using a spare key card she'd borrowed weeks ago from a friend. The air in the basement was staler than she remembered. Colder, too. Each step echoed. There were no lights, just the soft glow of her flashlight cutting through the dark. She found the mirror easily. It stood alone now, propped against the far wall, no covering, no warning signs, as if it wanted to be found. She approached slowly. The mirror shimmered faintly as though its surface were rippling just beneath the glass. She raised her compact mirror and angled it toward the larger one. And there it was again. The hallway, still, empty, except this time the open door at the far end had light pouring out from it, and a figure standing in the doorway. Trang couldn't see the face, only the white dress, the long dark hair. Then the figure lifted its hand and knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. The glass on both mirrors cracked simultaneously. Trang gasped and dropped the compact. Her flashlight flickered. The basement lights buzzed and turned on by themselves. And in the mirror, the hallway door began to close. But before it shut completely, the girl whispered, "You brought me back." Trang was found the next morning by a staff member unconscious in the basement, surrounded by broken glass. The mirror, gone. Her sketchbook lay beside her, open to a final freshly drawn image. A cracked mirror. But this time the reflection showed not just the girl, but Trang, smiling. From the other side, that week every mirror on campus was removed. But by then it didn't matter, because reflections had started appearing in windows, in phone screens, in water. The girl in white had found other ways to watch, and in every one of them someone new was standing beside her. The girl in the window, the windows in dormitory B had always been more decorative than functional. The panes were narrow, stiff to open, and set high into the concrete frame, overlooking the dull campus courtyard. Most students kept the curtains drawn not for privacy, but because the view offered little but fog and pigeons. But one morning in late October, Ngok, a freshman living on the second floor, left her window half open to let the breeze in. That was the day she saw the girl. It started subtly. Ngok was brushing her teeth when she noticed movement in the reflection of the bathroom window. The room behind her was empty, yet the glass showed a shadow passing behind her, slow and smooth as if someone had glided across the hallway. She turned. No one. When she looked back, her own reflection was slightly delayed, half a second behind. She closed the window and didn't mention it. That night she dreamed of the girl in white. Not a nightmare exactly, but something far worse, a dream that felt too real. The girl stood in the courtyard barefoot, head tilted, staring straight up at Ngok's window. Her mouth moved, forming words Ngok couldn't hear. Her eyes were black voids. And behind her, the mirror, the one from room 313, floated cracked, reflecting nothing. When Ngok woke, her curtains had been drawn. She never remembered closing them. Within a week, multiple students reported seeing faces in the windows at night, reflections that didn't belong to anyone in the room, gestures that mimicked no one, sometimes even figures that appeared in fifth-floor windows, though the dorm only had 4 floors. The university dismissed it all as stress-related hallucinations and increased counselor hours. But the maintenance log quietly added a new code, W3113 window anomaly, near room 313 vicinity. Only 3 staff members had clearance to see W313 reports. One of them was Mr. Lamb. After his forced leave, Mr. Lamb had taken to cataloging campus inconsistencies in a private journal. Flickering lights erased camera footage, changes in physical structure. But windows were new. He reviewed the building blueprints. Dormitory B had 72 windows. On October 12th, a freshman had filed a repair request about a window that wouldn't close. Window Narcon 38, second floor, right below room 313. Mr. Lom inspected it himself. The latch had been bent outward, not inward, as if something had pushed its way into the dorm from outside. He replaced the latch and sealed it with a temporary bolt. That night it broke again. But the real horror wasn't the broken latch. It was the footprint on the inside windowsill. Small, wet, bare. By the 3rd week of October, students were taping posters and towels over their windows. It didn't stop the sounds. Late at night, residents heard knocking from the glass, not the door. And when they dared to peek, they saw her, standing just outside the window, no matter what floor they were on. No ledge, no rope. No logical way she could be there. Just watching, sometimes with her face pressed flat to the glass, fogging it slightly. Other times just standing inches away, arms at her sides, her eyes locked with theirs. She never moved until they blinked. Then she was gone. Then a 4th-year architecture student decided to investigate it himself. He believed in patterns, structures, psychological triggers. He'd written his final thesis on the effects of spatial design on fear response. If fear was a construct, it could be dismantled. He documented each sighting, collected statements, and plotted window coordinates. There was a pattern, a spiral. Each reported sighting formed a looping, expanding spiral from the epicenter room 313. Whatever was happening, it was spreading. Thon installed motion sensors outside his window. He set up a thermal camera. He even coated the glass with a special film that would react to body heat. For 3 nights, nothing. On the 4th at 3:13 a.m., the alarm tripped. He rushed to his setup. The thermal camera showed a handprint. pressed firmly against the window. But there was no visible person, only heat. Then the center of the image flared heat concentrated into a perfect face mouth, open as if screaming, and then blackout. Every device he had short-circuited. When he checked the footage the next morning, all files had been overwritten, except one. His still frame taken seconds before the crash. The girl in white. Not outside his window, inside his room. Thun left campus the next day. He didn't speak. Didn't pack much. Just walked into the counselor's office, handed her his ID, and whispered, "She's not in the mirror anymore." Trang, still recovering in silence, began drawing windows instead of mirrors. Page after page. Each one slightly different. In some, the glass was cracked. In others, it was shattered outward as if someone had burst through it from inside. On one page she wrote, "She used the mirror to enter our world. Now she uses the windows to look for who's next." By early November, glass began shattering across campus. Not randomly. Always at 3:13 a.m. The art building lost 2 panels in one night. The library skylight collapsed despite no weather disturbance. In every case, shards fell inward. Yet no alarms triggered. No intrusions. No explanation. Just one recurring witness statement. "I thought I saw someone outside the window, but we're on the 4th floor." Students began avoiding glass entirely. Phone screens were taped over. Bathroom mirrors were removed. Laptops faced the wall. People carried blackout cloths in their backpacks. Some even walked with umbrellas open indoors, a quiet protest against visibility. The university issued a vague statement. "We are aware of recent student anxieties and are providing increased psychological support." But those who had seen her knew better. It wasn't anxiety. It was warning. One night, Ngok, whose sighting had started it all, woke to find her window open again. She had taped it shut 3 times. This time the wind wasn't blowing in. It was completely still. She stepped forward slowly, her legs trembling. The moon was high, casting a pale blue light. Outside her window was the rooftop edge of the adjacent building. Standing on it impossibly still was the girl in white. Ngok wanted to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The girl slowly lifted a hand and knocked. 3 times. Ngok collapsed backward. When she opened her eyes, her window was closed. But on the glass was a perfect handprint from the outside. The next morning, her roommate found a message scrawled on the inside of their wall, written in what looked like charcoal dust. "You looked. She chose." Ngok was gone. No one saw her leave. Her clothes, books, and ID were still there. The only thing missing was her curtain. It had been torn down and left hanging outside the window. Trang drew again. This time she didn't draw a girl. She drew a crowd, all standing behind windows, faces pressed to the glass, some smiling, some screaming, some reaching out, and one figure, the girl in white, walking away from them, her hair lifted by a wind that didn't exist on the page. She wrote, "She's building something. Not just a way in, a way out for others like her." The final window to break was in room 313. Though it had been sealed, reinforced, and triple bolted, a loud crack rang out across the dorm at 3:13 a.m. Students on every floor heard it. The next morning, the guards inspected the sealed hallway. The window, one that hadn't been touched in years, was shattered inward. And written in blood on the floor, "We see you now." Security tried to board it up. But every night since then, someone or something removes the boards. And each time, behind the shattered frame, a new face appears in the glass. Not just the girl. Now there are many, each of them watching, each of them waiting. Diary of the Vanished. When the university reopened after winter break, the administration hoped the worst had passed. Room 313 was now under a full steel seal. The 3rd floor was officially off limits. Windows had been replaced with opaque panes, and all mirrors were permanently removed from campus housing. But students hadn't forgotten, because people were still missing. Ngars, Mikanan, Ving, Huchan, and now Thao, a quiet literature major who had no known connection to any of the victims, except for one detail. She lived in room 312, right next to the source. Thao's roommate reported her missing on January 8th. She said Thao had been acting strange in the days leading up to her disappearance, writing constantly in a small black notebook, refusing to speak, staring into glass surfaces like the screen of her turned-off phone or even the reflection in someone's eyes. Sometimes she would whisper things under her breath. "She's looking through me. I hear them walking behind the walls. They're learning our names." When she vanished, the police found no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no blood, no DNA. But they found the notebook. It was delivered anonymously to Trang, whose condition had stabilized over the break. She had moved off campus, but she hadn't stopped drawing. If anything, her sketches had become more intricate pages filled with reflections, hallways, and shadowy figures trapped in frames of ink. When she received Thao's diary, she was both terrified and relieved. Someone else had seen it too. Someone else had tried to fight back. She turned the first page. Diary of the vanished name withheld for the next me. If you're reading this, you're already part of it. The girl in white, the windows, the mirror, the room. It's all connected. And it's watching you now. Trang shivered. The handwriting was precise, calm. Not the ramblings of someone broken. More like a confession. A message carved from fear and discipline. She continued reading. They say it started in room 313, but I think it started before that. Much before. The mirror wasn't cursed, it was a doorway. A barrier, yes, but also a beacon. Someone looked too long. Someone opened it. It lets them see us. Then they try to find a way in. Mirrors, windows, screens, it doesn't matter. Anything with a reflection is a window now. And if you see her, she sees you. Trang flipped to the next entry. I watched Min disappear. He didn't scream, didn't run. One night he just stood in front of the mirror in the communal bathroom and whispered something. Then he wasn't there anymore. Just his reflection standing alone. I know how it sounds, but I saw it. The mirror stayed. But his reflection didn't follow him out. It stayed there, watching me. Trang remembered Min. She remembered how his photo had been removed from the school website after he vanished like he'd never existed. She kept reading. I tried not to look after that, at anything. Covered my phone. Stopped using the bathroom mirror. But it's not enough. I started hearing them at night. Not just her others. Footsteps behind the wall. Breathing through the vents. Whispers in the drain. Room 313 isn't just a room, it's a mouth. And it's hungry. Trang froze. She hadn't told anyone the dream she'd had 2 nights ago. Where she stood in a dark hallway with no floor or ceiling, just doors, all closed, except one. Room 313. Its door was breathing. She turned the page. I tried something last night. I placed a mirror facing another mirror. You know that endless tunnel of reflections? I thought maybe it would trap them, confuse them. Instead, I saw something new. Not the girl, not the hallway, not even myself. I saw a table, covered in photos. My face in everyone. But each photo was different. Different expressions, different clothes, different mess. All of them screaming. Trang looked up from the notebook, her hands shaking. Outside her apartment window, the wind suddenly stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. They're building something behind the reflection. Not a prison. A mirror city. A version of this world twisted. Unfinished. Waiting to be completed. I think they're using us, our memories, our images, to construct it. Every time someone vanishes, a piece of it is built. They don't want to hurt us. They want to mirror us. They want to replace us. Trang had read about this theory once in folklore. Changeling legends. Creatures from beyond replacing humans by stealing their likeness. But in this case, the method was digital, reflective, psychological. Not physical kidnapping. Reflection assimilation. She turned to the final entry. I saw her in my own eyes today. My reflection blinked before I did. I tried to smash the mirror, but it doesn't help anymore. They're already here. I'm going to room 313 tonight, alone. I don't know if I'll come back. But maybe if I go willingly, I can learn something. If you find this diary, don't try to save me. Just remember me. That's the only way to stop them. Forgetting feeds them. Memory starves them. Kuranisato. Trang stared at the final page. No blood. No scream. Just silence. She knew she had a choice. Forget Thou. Let her become another erased file, another shadow in the glass. Or remember, and risk being remembered back. That night, Trang lit a candle and placed the notebook in front of her. She opened it to the last page, stared at the signature. Then she whispered, I remember you. The candle flickered. The room grew colder. In the darkened window behind her, a second candle lit itself. But she was the only one in the room. She turned slowly. In the window, Thao stood behind her, hair uncombed, skin pale, lips cracked but smiling. And her eyes, not vacant, just waiting, as if watching to see whether Trang would finish what she started. Trang stood and faced the window. No scream, no panic, just resolve. She whispered, show me. And the glass shimmered. For a moment it looked like water. Behind it a hallway, endless, with mirrors lining both sides, and faces trapped within each one. Some crying, some reaching, some grinning too wide. Trang raised a hand, and from inside the window Thao did the same. Across campus in a forgotten office, an old security monitor blinked on. Camera 3 hallway near room 313. No movement, but the timestamp 3:13 a.m. flickered. And in the lower right corner, for just one frame, Trang's reflection, smiling from the wrong side. Don't say her name. It had become something of a superstition now. The older students warned the younger ones, don't speak about room 313 aloud. Don't look into dark glass after midnight. And above all, don't say her name. No one said the girl in white. No one said the reflection. She had become nameless deliberately because too many had discovered the same truth too late. To name her is to call her. It wasn't just students anymore. Staff had begun resigning without warning. Security guards refused night shifts on the 3rd floor. Campus IT personnel reported strange access patterns, login attempts from rooms that hadn't been in use for years. Digital ghosts, some called them. IP pings from room 313, even though the room had been sealed for over 6 months. Every attempt to trace the signal ended with mirror IP addresses, echoes of actual ones like digital reflections from nowhere. Even the surveillance system had begun acting strangely. The camera outside room 313 had stopped recording movement. Instead, it looped the same 20 seconds of footage. An empty hallway, a light flickering, a figure in white at the far end, not walking, just standing, perfectly still, too far away to identify, but always there. Lynn, a first-year student from the humanities department, had never heard the full story. She'd only arrived this semester and assumed most of the ghost talk was exaggerated to scare newcomers. But something had started following her. Not a person, a presence. At first it was the feeling of being watched while brushing her hair in the communal bathroom. Then the sound of her name whispered softly when she turned off the lights. And then came the voice. It was a Wednesday night when she woke at 3:13 a.m. Every electronic device in her dorm had turned on. Her laptop, her phone, even the old radio she'd bought from a secondhand stall. They all played the same thing static. And underneath the static, her own voice reading aloud from an entry in her diary she'd never shared with anyone. I dreamed of the white hallway again, only this time, she knew I was watching. Lynn scrambled to unplug everything. The static continued for another 30 seconds before stopping abruptly. Only one word was spoken after the silence. A name, soft, drawn out, female. Not Lynn's. Not anyone she knew. She couldn't remember it when she woke, but she remembered how it felt. like someone had whispered it into her bones. She went to the library the next day and searched the student database for the name, what little she could recall. A few syllables, a cadence, a shape of sound. She found nothing, until the librarian asked her to repeat it. When Lynn tried to say it again, her lips stopped moving. Her mouth stopped forming the shape, as if her body refused, as if something inside her had learned not to let it out. That evening, she visited the dorm records. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, only that her dreams were filled with a face she never saw but somehow recognized. A girl, pale, hair floating like seaweed underwater, a mouth that moved without sound, a shadow that always stood behind her. She searched the room registry for 313. It showed no entries. The admin file had been scrubbed. No names, no dates, no sign it had ever been used. But there was a note in the paper ledger, a smudged handwritten entry in faded pencil. Room 313 silenced, do not log, do not name. And next to it, a name half erased, illegible, until Lynn touched it and remembered it. The moment she did, the lights flickered. A chill ran through her hands. She whispered it aloud unconsciously. The full name, spoken for the first time in over a year. And in that instant, something hurt her. The girl in white returned that night, but this time she didn't appear in the window, not in a mirror, not in a shadow. She appeared behind Lynn. When Lynn checked her phone camera to fix her bangs, she saw a second figure in the frame. White dress, black eyes, head tilted, smiling. By the time she turned around, there was nothing. But her reflection had changed. Her eyes weren't hers anymore. Lynn contacted Trang. She had heard whispers about the older girl, about the notebooks, the drawings, the visions. Trang answered her call on the second ring. Lynn didn't explain much, just asked one question. What happens if you remember her name? Trang went silent for a long time, then said, you become part of her. And worse, she becomes part of you. Names hold power. In every culture, names bind spirits. Names unlock doors. And this girl, the girl from room 313, had no name anymore. Because the university had buried it. Because every time someone said it, she got closer. Trang explained what she'd learned. The room doesn't trap the girl. The room is the girl. She is the manifestation of everyone who has remembered her. She exists as memory and as reflection, both living and dead. And her name is the anchor. Every time it's spoken, the barrier weakens. Lynn couldn't sleep that night. She'd written the name on a slip of paper and hidden it inside her textbook. But the next morning it was gone, and in its place between the pages was a drawing. Not hers. It looked like Trang's style. A sketch of a girl in bed asleep, and standing over her, the girl in white, both smiling. The final straw came when Lynn's roommate vanished. No screams, no signs of struggle. Just a name written in lipstick on the window. You called her. She came for me. Lynn dropped out that week. But before she left, she made one last request to Trang. If you can find the name again, burn it. Even if it costs me everything. Don't let anyone else say it. Trang agreed. But fire couldn't erase her. Trang tried to burn the final diary entry, the one containing the faint trace of the name. She lit a match, set it on the paper. And the flame froze. Not stopped. Frozen like a photograph of fire hovering above the ink. Then it reversed. The paper unburned itself. And the name appeared darker, clearer, as if the fire had revealed it rather than destroyed it. And below it, a new message appeared. One that hadn't been there before. You said it once. Now she knows your voice. Trang didn't sleep that night. She stared into the darkened screen of her laptop, into the void where her reflection should be, and saw the girl's eyes looking back. Not accusing, not angry, welcoming. Some names summon gods, others summon demons. But hers, her name summons attention. And once you've spoken it even once, you're part of her story. You become another line in the reflection, another mouth in the wall, another step in the spiral. And no matter where you go, what mirrors you break, what lights you leave on, she knows your name now. Trang tore the page from the diary. She burned it again, this time with salt and alcohol and incense, ancient methods. The page screamed as it curled not physically but through her thoughts. A high-pitched shriek that existed only in her skull. She clutched her head. The sound stopped. The fire consumed the paper. For now. But Trang knew it was only temporary. Because as the ashes cooled, the mirror across the room fogged over. And written in its condensation, "You remembered me, I remember you." And below it the name. Perfect, unburned, etched from the inside. Room 313 reopens. By itself. It was raining the night room 313 opened again. Not a storm. Not even a proper downpour. Just a slow, steady drizzle that painted the windows in streaks and made every step in the corridor echo a little longer, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The dorm was almost empty now. Midterms were over. Most students had gone home early for the spring holiday, but a few remained, and they would be the ones to hear it first. The click. A soft metallic clack like the sound of an old door unlatching after too long. No one had a key. No one had touched that door in months. No one, human. The first person to witness the reopening was Mr. N, the night security officer. He'd been patrolling the lower levels when the alert came in, unauthorized door access. Room 313, 3:13 a.m. Of course, he sighed, assuming it was a sensor error. Again, he walked upstairs, slowly flashlight in hand, the familiar buzzing of the hallway lights guiding him toward the forbidden third floor. As he approached the final landing, something felt off. It was too quiet. Even the rain, which should have been tapping at the window, was gone. And then he saw it. Room 313. Open. The door stood just slightly ajar, only an inch, maybe two. But it was enough. Enough to break every layer of reinforced steel bolting that had sealed it. Enough to trigger every fail-safe the university had secretly installed after the last incident. But there were no alarms this time. No power surge, no panic. Just the door, open, waiting. Inside darkness, complete. Mr. An shone his light into the room and saw nothing. Not emptiness, absence. The beam of his flashlight stopped cold at the threshold, swallowed like it had hit water. He didn't step in. But as he turned to leave, the hallway behind him had disappeared. Trang awoke to the sound of her phone vibrating violently on her desk. She'd received a new message. Unknown number. No text. Just an image. Grainy black and white, security footage. Camera 3, dormitory B, third floor. Timestamp 03:13 a.m. The image showed the corridor outside room 313. Door wide open. And standing in the center of the hallway, Mr. N, frozen mid-step. And behind him in the doorway, a figure cloaked in shadows. Her outline unmistakable. The girl in white. Trang didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply whispered, "It's begun." She grabbed her notebook and opened it to the last sketch, an unfinished drawing of room 313. She stared at it, remembering all the warnings, all the stories. And she understood something she hadn't before. Room 313 wasn't haunted. It was awake. Every sighting, every whisper, every appearance of the girl had been a kind of dream. Now the room had opened its eyes, and it was looking back. The university attempted to issue a public statement later that morning. They called it a security malfunction. Said the room had been accidentally triggered by an electrical short. Said Mr. An had requested a personal leave of absence. But those who saw the footage knew the truth. Because in the last second of the recording before it cut to black, the hallway began to bend. Literally bend, as if the walls were warping inward, curling like paper set too close to flame. And someone stepped through the darkness where the floor should have been. Rumors spread fast. Despite the school's efforts to suppress the footage, students passed it around like wildfire. Screen recordings, airdrops, encrypted group chats, and with each share, strange things began to happen. Phones froze when the video reached the timestamp 3:13. A few students claimed to hear breathing through their headphones. One girl, after watching it, looked into her selfie camera and said, "She's standing behind me." Then she laughed and walked out of her dorm barefoot. She hasn't been seen since. Trang decided she had to go back. Not out of curiosity, not even fear, but responsibility. She was part of this now. She had said the name. She had seen the mirror. She had drawn the girl, dreamed her hallway, and read the diary of the vanished. If room 313 had opened by itself, it meant the barrier between here and there was breaking. And once it broke completely, the girl wouldn't need mirrors anymore. She wouldn't need names. She would just walk out. Trang returned to the campus under the cover of dusk. Her footsteps echoed as she entered the abandoned dorm. A guard was stationed at the main gate, but he didn't even look up. He just sat in his booth, face blank, eyes unfocused. When she whispered, "I'm going to her," he nodded slowly, like he already knew. Like something inside him had already opened the door. The third floor was cold. Not in a physical sense, but spiritually. The kind of cold that crept behind your ears and along your spine. The lights above buzzed and dimmed, flickering in rhythm. And there it was. Room 313. Open. Fully this time. Door pushed wide like an invitation. Trang stepped inside. There was nothing. No furniture, no smell, no dust. Only darkness and silence. So deep she could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears like a drum. She took one step, then two, and suddenly the room changed. The floor dropped away. The walls elongated. The ceiling twisted. She was no longer in a dorm room. She was in the hallway from her dreams. It stretched infinitely in both directions, lined with doors. Mirrors hung on each one, but none showed her reflection. Instead, each mirror showed someone else. Students, professors, security guards, past and present, all frozen, all staring directly into the mirror, mouths open in mid-scream. And behind each, the same silhouette, the girl in white, reaching. Trang walked slowly. Every step echoed like thunder. Each mirror she passed began to hum softly, until she reached the final door. Room 313. A version of itself, distorted, carved in the same black wood as the others. But this one was breathing, pulsing, alive. Trang placed her hand on the knob. It was warm, like skin. Inside, the room was lit only by candlelight. Dozens of mirrors circled the space, on walls, on floors, suspended from above. And in the center, standing perfectly still, was the girl. Not facing Trang, but a mirror. Watching herself. Silently, as if waiting. Trang didn't speak. She stepped forward, and the girl finally turned. Her face was not monstrous. It was familiar. Too familiar. Trang gasped, because it was her own. "Why do you look like me?" she asked. The girl didn't answer, but her reflection in the mirrors did. Dozens of mouths moved at once. "Because you remembered me. Because you let me in. Because I am what's left when memory replaces reality." The girl took a step forward. Trang couldn't move, couldn't blink. She was paralyzed not with fear, but recognition. This wasn't a ghost. This wasn't a curse. This was a reflection made real. A persona constructed from fragments of every person who had entered the room, who had drawn her, dreamed her, named her. Trang had given her shape. Now the girl wanted to give Trang her place. One final mirror stood between them. Trang saw herself in it. She was fading. Literally, her edges blurring, colors draining. The girl in white stood behind her in the glass, smiling. Trang whispered, "If I let you out, what happens to me?" The girl tilted her head. Reflections answered, "You won't be gone. You'll be remembered. In me." Trang reached into her bag. She pulled out a shard from the broken mirror. She had saved one last link to the old world. She held it up. The girl blinked. The mirrors around them began to crack. One by one, the humming grew louder. The walls began to shake. Trang whispered, "I'm not your vessel. I'm your jailer." And with that, she stabbed the mirror between them. A howl erupted not from the girl, but from the room itself. The mirrors exploded. The lights vanished. Trang screamed. And then, silence. Campus officials found her the next morning, unconscious in room 313, alone, unharmed. The room was empty. All mirrors gone. The door sealed again without anyone touching it. Trang awoke days later smiling faintly. When asked what she remembered, she only said, "I closed it." But no one noticed the mirror in her hospital room, cracked, and behind her reflection, a new figure, watching, waiting, smiling. The curse spreads in Meduwan. Trang didn't remember waking up. One moment she was in the hallway of mirrors, dark, endless, humming with unseen energy. And the next she was lying in a hospital bed, sunlight warming her face. But something had changed. Not just in her, everywhere. At first it was small things. Her nurse avoided the mirror above the sink. When Trang asked why the nurse just mumbled something about glitches and turned away, her phone no longer opened the camera app. Every time she tried it crashed. And when she caught her reflection in the turned-off TV across the room, it didn't blink. Not when she did. Across the city, others were experiencing it too. Students who had never lived in Dormitory B began to report strange dreams. They saw doors in their minds, hundreds of them. One always stood out. Room 313. Even those who had never heard the legend felt drawn to it. People whispered its number in their sleep, wrote it in notebooks on whiteboards on walls. Some woke to find it scratched into their skin. The room had been sealed, but now it no longer needed to exist physically. It had become a concept, an idea, and ideas can't be locked away. One viral video accelerated everything. A campus streamer uploaded a blurry, overexposed clip titled, "I spent 3 minutes outside room 313 at 3:13 a.m." The footage was mostly silence and static, but halfway through there was a flicker, a white blur just at the edge of frame, barely visible, and a faint voice, repeating one phrase distorted but persistent. "Do you remember me?" Within 24 hours, the video had over 400,000 views, and strange things began happening in the comments. First were the deleted profiles. Users who commented jokes or dared to tag friends suddenly had their accounts wiped. Then came the reflections. People reported seeing themselves in their front cameras, but not matching their movements. One girl posted a TikTok reacting to the footage she stopped halfway through filming, because in the recording her face was smiling before she did. And then her screen froze. Seconds later, her phone recorded on its own. She was seen leaving the room, but her reflection remained seated. She hasn't been heard from since. Trang begged the university to intervene. She spoke to counselors, deans, even outside media. They dismissed her politely, thanked her for her concern. But the footage from her incident, the medical reports, the logs from room 313, all gone. Vanished like so many others. In their place was an empty report, psychological hallucinations related to academic stress. Case closed. Trang realized the truth. The curse had spread too far. Now it was evolving. The girl in white was no longer just an echo in one room. She had multiplied. Every mirror, every phone screen, every reflective surface had become a window and a portal. She no longer needed room 313. She was room 313. And she was using every screen, every glance, every casual whisper of her story to move closer. The name didn't need to be spoken anymore. Just remembered, just referenced, just feared. And fear, as Trang now knew, was a form of invitation. She began documenting new cases, creating an encrypted archive with names, patterns, visual anomalies. She called it the ripple file, because that's how it worked. Like ripples in water. One student sees a figure, tells a friend. The friend dreams about a hallway. The hallway has a door. The door bears a number. And suddenly the curse has spread 2 steps further. A literature professor at a nearby college began teaching a seminar on urban legends. In one session, a student brought up room 313. He laughed and encouraged the discussion. They wrote the name on the board. The next day, he was found unconscious in his office. No bruises, no injuries, but scrawled across the whiteboard in red marker, written in his own handwriting. I said her name. She listened. He never returned to work. Now he paints only in black and white. Dozens of faceless girls in dresses walking through corridors of shattered glass. Trang received an email from an anonymous source. No message. Just a file. Emper Ford. No sender. Subject line. We never closed the door. She almost deleted it. But curiosity won. She opened the video. At first it was a static hallway unmoving. Then a slow zoom toward a closed door. Room 313. Only it wasn't the dorm. It was her apartment door. The one behind her. She spun around nothing. She looked back at the screen. Now the door in the video was open. Trang reached forward and unplugged the laptop. But the screen remained on. And on it a single frame, her own face. Except her eyes were solid black. And the words beneath. You remembered. Now you're the memory. Trang smashed the laptop. Shards flew everywhere. But even in the glass she saw them. Reflections that weren't hers. Hundreds of them. Each staring back, each wearing her face, or what used to be her face. The curse wasn't content with victims anymore. It wanted mirrors. It wanted avatars. Soon, Trang wasn't the only one. Students across the country began reporting, seeing their reflections move a split second too late, waking with mirror-shaped bruises, losing minutes, sometimes hours after looking into screens. One student live-streamed his bedroom overnight. At 3:13 a.m., the chat exploded with, "Who's behind you? Is that your girlfriend? She's just standing there. OMG. But the streamer was alone, until he wasn't. The stream ended abruptly. The last frame showed his chair empty, and his monitor cracked, with a single word written in fog. Again. Trang stopped sleeping, stopped using mirrors, stopped touching her phone. She kept a notebook and a black cloth to cover any reflections. But the world wouldn't stop. Every public place now held a threat. Elevator doors, bus windows, coffee machines, dark puddles on rainy days. Anything could be her. And the more people believed, the stronger she grew. She wasn't just a ghost anymore. She was a story. And stories live longer than people. One night, Trang received a letter. Not an email, not a call. An actual envelope, no return address. Inside, one photograph. Room 303. But not empty. Inside stood a classroom. Chalkboard, desks, students with no faces. And written on the blackboard. Lesson 1, she spreads when you look. Trang turned the photo over. In faint ink, you closed one door, but mirrors opened both ways. It hit her. That's why the reflections lingered. That's why the dreams had shifted from fear to mimicry. People weren't just being haunted. They were being copied. The curse had learned to inhabit, to walk, speak, even think like the people it took. Trang saw it clearly now. Room 313 was never about a location. It was about replacement. One day, Trang passed by her own reflection in a bakery window. She stopped. Her reflection didn't. It kept walking. And as it did, it turned its head and smiled. Not cruelly, but gently. Like someone taking over a shift. Like someone saying, I've got it from here. Trang stood in silence, let it walk away, and whispered to herself, it's not just a curse. It's a system, and it's working. She disappeared the next week. Her apartment was found empty. Her notes burned. Only one page remained stuck to her refrigerator door. A mirror had been nailed to it. On the paper written in red, I am the reflection now, and you're already looking.